Hello, I want to thank you for clicking on my channel. I'm PI187. I just gotten done reacting to what the Germans thought of Canadian soldiers in World War One. So I thought I'd look up to see if there's anything about them in World War Two, and I found this 10-minute video. Because I didn't want it to be too long. Like I said in the last video, my two videos prior were extremely long, and I don't want to do any of that long this week. So I'm glad this is only going to be 10 minutes long. And this one is why Nazi Germany feared Canadian soldiers in World War II. And it's probably because of what we did in World War I, to be honest. But let's see what they say.
On June 6, 1944, as Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, one nation's soldiers advanced faster and fought harder than anyone expected. These weren't the largest in number, nor the most famous, but they earned a fearsome reputation. Among Nazi commanders, they became known as stormtroopers. The twist? These soldiers weren't German, they were Canadian. That nickname wasn't a compliment. It was an admission. An acknowledgement from the enemy that Canadian troops were dangerous, relentless, shock troops in the truest sense. To understand why that nickname matters, we need to go back to where it began. In World War I, stormtroopers, or Stoßtruppen, were elite German assault units trained to break through entrenched enemy positions using speed, surprise, and brutal close-quarters combat. They were the best of the best, and their tactics were revolutionary for the time. So when that same label was used by Germans in World War II, this time about their enemies, it meant something. It meant they had met a force that reminded them of their own deadliest fighters. And in Normandy, that force was Canada's. Canada's 3rd Infantry Division landed at Juno Beach on D-Day. They faced fierce resistance, concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery, and underwater obstacles. Within the first hour, casualty rates were approaching 50% in some units. But the Canadians adapted quickly, regrouped, and pushed forward. By the end of the day, they had advanced more than 10 kilometers inland, farther than any other Allied landing force. That alone got attention. But that was just the beginning. In the weeks after D-Day, Canadian troops were assigned to some of the hardest tasks in the Normandy campaign. One of the most grueling was the Battle of Caen, a city the Allies hoped to capture within 24 hours of landing. It took over a month. Canadian and British forces faced elite Waffen-SS units, fanatical defenders who refused to give ground. The fighting was often at point-blank range, from house to house, under constant artillery fire. In the chaos of Caen, Canadian soldiers proved their worth again and again. They moved quickly, adapted under fire, and maintained momentum even when pinned down. This wasn't luck or brute force. It was the result of training, battlefield experience, and sheer determination. German officers took notice. In internal reports and captured communications, the same pattern kept appearing. Canadian troops were more aggressive, more unpredictable, and more willing to fight to the bitter end. To the Germans, it felt familiar, disturbingly familiar. These weren't just Allied soldiers, these were stormtroopers. So how did Canadian soldiers develop this reputation? Part of it came from their combat experience. Before Normandy, Canadian troops had fought through Sicily and Italy, campaigns filled with brutal mountain warfare, minefields, and constant ambushes. They had faced German paratroopers, panzer divisions, and dug-in defenders in conditions that tested every aspect of soldiering. By the time they landed in France, they weren't green. They were hardened veterans. Another factor was their tactics. Canadian military leadership emphasized flexibility and initiative. Unlike the rigid top-down structures seen in some other armies, Canadian officers encouraged junior leaders to think on their feet. If a sergeant saw a problem, he didn't have to wait for an order from above. He solved it. That autonomy allowed Canadian units to move faster, react quicker, and adapt under pressure. But perhaps the most defining trait was their attitude. Canadian soldiers were known for their no-nonsense practical approach. They didn't seek glory. They didn't chase medals. They focused on the mission. And when the mission was to take a town, hold a bridge, or clear a trench, they did it, often at great cost. That cost became even clearer in the battles that followed Normandy.
I'd mentioned this in a prior video. My grandmother's brother joined the war and never made it back, and he was only 16 years old when he went to war. He lied about his age. I guess there was a lot of that going on with people, younger people, just they wanted to go, which is just crazy to think, because in today's day and age, a lot of people wouldn't volunteer really to go get themselves killed. Especially the children we have today around anyway. So it's pretty crazy to think that, like, yeah, someone that wasn't even an actual soldier decided to, lie about his age just so he could join the war and go to war and fight. But like I said, he never made it back. I have a picture of him here. Some of the houses used to be on my wall in the room behind us here, but I think it's in storage in my basement now, if I believe. We took down a lot of the pictures a while back, and my wife put them all in a storage thing, so we haven't bothered to put some of them back up. So I'm thinking that's where it is, but anyhow, it doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is, yeah, it's pretty crazy that people would volunteer to go to war that doesn't even have to go. Like, he was underage. I'm pretty sure you had to be 16 or 18 to go, and hence why he lied about his age. But anyhow, let's get on with this.
Take the Falaise pocket. In August 1944, Canadian forces...
Okay. Are we seeing this? What's going on here? Just somebody didn't finish this picture, or is this just a half a guy standing here that lost his top half? I don't know, that's just really weird, because you'd think if his top half got knocked off, those legs should be laying on the ground. They shouldn't be standing like that. I don't know, that's really strange. But anyhow,
helped encircle tens of thousands of German troops retreating from Normandy. It was a chaotic, desperate battle. Roads were clogged with fleeing vehicles, wreckage, and bodies. The Canadians attacked from the north, the Americans from the south, and the Poles from the east. The goal was to seal the pocket, to trap and destroy the remnants of the German 7th Army. The Canadians took heavy losses. German troops fought savagely to escape, but the Canadians didn't let up. They pressed forward, taking hilltops, holding roads, and cutting off escape routes. When the battle was over, the Falaise pocket had collapsed. It was one of the most decisive Allied victories in the West, and Canadian troops had been at the very center of it. From there, the Canadians advanced through France into Belgium and eventually into the Netherlands. In the Scheldt Estuary campaign, they faced perhaps their toughest challenge yet, clearing German forces from critical ports so Allied supplies could flow in. The terrain was flooded, flat and exposed. Movement was slow. The enemy was dug in. But the Canadians fought on, often knee-deep in mud, under sniper fire, pushing forward inch by inch. In the final months of the war, Canadian forces played a key role in liberating the Netherlands. It wasn't just about defeating German troops. It was about saving civilians. The Dutch population was starving. Cities were destroyed. Entire regions had been flooded by the retreating Germans. Canadian soldiers brought food, medical supplies, and hope. In city after city, they were greeted not just as soldiers, but as liberators. To this day, Dutch citizens still hold parades in honor of Canada's role in their liberation.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's a strange-looking Canadian flag right there. Maybe some of them were like that in that time. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Streets are named after Canadian units. Veterans are welcomed like heroes. It's one of the most heartfelt legacies of the entire war. But while civilians remembered them with gratitude, German officers remembered them with something else: fear. Reports from captured prisoners, battlefield notes, and later interviews all tell the same story. When Canadians arrived, the fighting got harder. The resistance had to stiffen. Because these weren't ordinary soldiers. These were stormtroopers. Even among Allied commanders, the reputation of Canadian forces grew. They were given difficult objectives, not because they were expendable, but because they were trusted. Trusted to hold ground, to finish the job, to adapt when plans went wrong, and they often did. It's worth remembering that Canada, at the time, had a population of just over 11 million. Yet more than 1 million Canadians served in uniform during World War II. That's nearly 10% of the entire country. Over 45,000 were killed. More than 55,000 were wounded. Entire towns sent sons to fight, and many never came back. And still, their stories are often left out of the broader narrative. Hollywood rarely mentions them.
Yeah, that's something I was kind of thinking here while I was sitting here watching this, is the fact that, like, Americans always take credit for, you know, ending the wars and being the #1 soldiers and etc., etc., and they never ever talk about Canadian troops or Canadian fighters, and they definitely wouldn't talk about Canadians like this being like, oh, they were, you know, so tough and ruthless, and, you know, they did such a great job, because, you know, America likes to take that for themselves. Yeah, they don't talk about this much in movies at all, unless they're, like, I guess, trying to be really, really truthful or correct on the history and get it all right. But most times they just leave this stuff out.
History books tend to focus on the larger powers, the Americans.
Yep, that's pretty much what I've always seen my whole life, the Americans.
The British, the Soviets.
Yep, and the British.
But behind the scenes, and often on the front lines, Canadian soldiers were making a critical difference. They weren't fighting for headlines. They were fighting to win. And win they did. From the beaches of Normandy to the liberation of the Netherlands, Canadian troops showed the world, and the enemy, that they were not to be underestimated. When the Germans started calling them stormtroopers, it wasn't just a nickname. It was a signal, a warning, a recognition that they had encountered a force they couldn't easily stop, a force that would push through obstacles, take ground, and finish the mission, no matter the cost. That legacy continues today, in Canadian war cemeteries across Europe, in the memories of the people they liberated, in the veterans who came home, and in the many who didn't. This is the story of Canada's stormtroopers, one of the least told but most remarkable stories of World War II.
Wow, thank you for watching. That is awesome. Oh, what's going on? Anything else, or is just a lot of anything else here? Nope, just a lot of thank you for watching. All right, let's end that. Yeah, that's crazy. So we were pretty savage at both wars. And yeah, we don't get very much recognition for that. Like, pretty much people think Canadians are pansies when it comes to stuff like this, and obviously that's not the truth. But they always say, "Oh, Canada, oh, pushover. Oh, Canada, they're weakling and wimps, and their army sucks." And, you know, I hear a lot of different stuff. A lot of it comes from America, really, because, you know, they consider they have the biggest, strongest, and best army and soldiers and weapons and just everything on the planet. But like I said, they did lose to us, so they don't like to talk about that. They're like, "Oh, we won every war except for the time you fought Canada," but, you know, that's not one of the wars oh, that wasn't a real war, it doesn't count, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it is what it is. Obviously, Canadian soldiers could fight, and they weren't scared to run into battle. By the sounds of these last two videos I just watched, they were very brave. And, yeah, it's pretty neat that the Dutch still celebrate them and stuff, too. I thought that was pretty cool to hear. But anyhow, I want to thank you for watching my video, just like it says on the screen. And if you want to check out my other videos, feel free. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, that'd be awesome. I really do appreciate the comments. I read them all. So if you write something, I will read it. But anyhow, I'm going to end it there and talk to you later. And you guys have yourselves a wonderful day. Bye for now.